Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 7 with Kevin. My name is Kevin Maynard, and I'm the Executive Director of Quad City Arts, where our mission is to enrich the quality of life in the Quad City region through the arts. Now, to do this, we work with hundreds of artists throughout the year, and our community is impacted by these artists through their performances, public art installations, gallery exhibitions, and more. Now, our team has the added benefit of getting to work closer with these artists, which gives us the opportunity to learn more about them and their art. And we want to share that with you. And that is what 7 with Kevin is all about. Now, if you're tuning in live and have a question, go ahead and put that in the comment section. Tuning in live but don't have a question, still comment. Let us know where you're watching us from tonight. Tonight, I'll be joined by two musicians from Invoke. Invoke is part of our Visiting Artists Series educational resources and is next up on our Performing Arts Signature Series. Invoke has been described by one pretty important radio guy as not classical, but not classical. Invoke continues to successfully dodge even the most valiant attempts at genre classification. The multi-instrumental band's other nots encompass traditions from across America, including bluegrass, Appalachian fiddle tunes, jazz, and minimalism. Invoke weaves all of these styles together to create truly individual music, written by and for the group. It is really an impressive sound and repertoire. Please welcome Nick Montopoli and Zach Madison.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
My gosh, thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it. Now, before we jump into our 7 with Kevin icebreaker questions, Nick and Zach, if you could tell everybody where you're joining us from tonight and what instrument or instruments do you play in your group Invoke?
After you.
Sure. So I'm Zach, and I play violin. And I'm coming to you from my bedroom in Austin, Texas.
And what do you play?
Oh, violin. Sorry, one of these guys.
All three of those. And hey, I'm Nick, and I'm also in Austin, coming from what used to be my landlord's garage. And I play mostly violin and banjo with Invoke and do a little bit of singing as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, guys. All right, so let's jump into our 7 with Kevin. Nick and Zach, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, so I'll go back and forth, and I'll switch up who goes first. So Zach, we'll start with you. What are you currently watching on Netflix, TV, or other streaming services?
Right now, I'm watching Lupin, which is a French series on Netflix. I think it's about a gentleman thief. It's really great.
Excellent. How about you, Zach? Or sorry, Nick?
I just finished Narcos, third season of Narcos. Very, very intense, very heavy, but I feel like it's helping me with my Spanish. I'm trying to pick up a thing or two. You know, living in Texas, it would be useful to have. So yeah.
Excellent. All right, Nick, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Yes. Yes to both. I think I grew up a little more with Star Wars, but I love them both.
Yeah, I have a very same experience. I definitely was on the Star Wars bandwagon, and then I think about the past couple of years, have thanks to Netflix, really have kind of introduced myself to Star Trek. So, Zach, what about you?
Star Wars, but there's always a part in my heart that I have for Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, the original one, and then Return of Spock. Is that the third one? So those two imprinted on my mind. So, but I'm probably more of a Star Wars guy, and that's probably because of the music. So.
Oh yes.
But Jerry Goldsmith.
It's hard to pass John Williams. So.
Jerry Goldsmith's crush. Yeah.
All right, Zach, where is the best pizza in Austin?
That's a pretty good question, but I think my favorite is used to be a truck called Via 313, which is a Detroit-style pizza here in Austin. I think it's some of the best.
Very, very thick, like the deep dish stuff.
So would you concur with that, Nick, or do you have another favorite?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But another good spot is Home Slice. I haven't. I've only been there a couple of times, but yeah, I think I agree. Via 313 is top of the list.
Excellent. Yeah. Doing this series, I'm starting to like pick up a whole list of pizza places. So I think just, once things start opening up even more, I'm just going to make a road trip and just hit all these different stops. So,
Yes.
Well, if you're here, you got to go. You got to get some brisket. So let us know.
That's
Well,
for sure.
so see, I love barbecue and brisket. So where is the best place in Austin for brisket then?
Well, if you want to stand in line, get up at 5 a.m. and stand in line, Franklin's is really good. They usually sell out by 11 a.m. And then, but if you're an underrated but very accessible place is called Micklethwaite's. I think it's really great. It's a little truck behind Franklin's down the street. Really, really good.
And then of course there's Lockhart, which is about 40-minute drive down south-ish, and that's kind of like the home. That's where Black's is, and my favorite, Smitty's Market. You walk into the back and the logs are burning like right next to you. Cash only.
Oh man.
The whole room filled with smoke, and they just open up the pits right there and pull it out for you. So
Oh man. Maybe instead of you guys coming to visit us, I'll just come visit you for this tour. So
Yeah.
sounds good.
all right.
Weather's pretty
Nick,
nice.
Nick, what is your favorite book?
Favorite book? Oh, that's a good one. Fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, that's dealer's choice.
I'll go with Ted Chiang's short stories. So Ted Chiang is he's a science fiction short story writer, most well known for Arrival, the story that inspired the movie Arrival. And he has two collections of short stories that both of them are amazing.
Excellent. What about you, Zach?
Well, I'll give two. Like my defining book was Dune. I absolutely love Dune, by Frank Herbert. But I'm reading this amazing book, Parable of the Sower, by Octavia Butler, and it's like it was written in the 90s, but is set in 2024, and it's very it's sci-fi, but it's very on the nose what it feels like now. So it's pretty striking. I'd highly recommend it.
What was the book again? Parable of the Sower?
Yep, Parable of the Sower.
Excellent. All right. Zach, where is your go-to place for inspiration?
That's a really good question. Probably my Spotify account. Music is what I think really gets me into different moods, different places. So even if I'm traveling around or not in my zone, as it were, I can still kind of imitate it with listening to some, probably like Brian Eno, landscapes, or music for airports really gets me into like a good zone, working or creating. Yeah.
Excellent.
a good
Excellent.
question.
What about you, Nick?
I'm gonna go with the other book that I almost said. The book is The War of Art, and it's just an amazing collection of just very, very short, almost like mantras for artists, and it's similar to The Art of War, upon which the whole thing is based. It's just very simple ways to approach something that's incredibly complex, and I found that useful for anything creative, really.
Excellent. Yeah, I will have to. I will have to check that out for sure. All right, Nick. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Ooh, good question. I think it'd be something else creative. So I've never been very good at it, but I've always enjoyed like building things, woodworking, and those sorts of things. So something creative that involves building or crafting.
Excellent. And Zach?
I was That's a good answer, Nick. I've always wanted to be this is weird, but a truck driver, like a semi truck driver. I always been fascinated by like long road trips and what it would take to do that. So I have a kind of a dream of like, if I wasn't doing violin, I would do like multiple 2-year stints in different jobs, like truck driver, landscape gardener, bartender. Yeah, probably in that order, and then go from there.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, that actually would be a very interesting career. I mean, being able to just, check out the entire countryside, and keeping the economy rolling, and that's a great answer, and one that I haven't heard yet. So nice work. Zach,
We
this
got
is
plenty of long haul driving experience. So
that's
the
a
touring
that's a good
lifestyle.
Zach, this last one's going to start with you. And if you could have a drink with any artist, living or dead, who would it be?
Whew. Living or
Yeah,
dead. Jacob Collier. I don't know if he. I would say Jacob Collier. Living. He's like a. If you haven't heard of Jacob Collier, he just won his 5th Grammy in a row for his newest album, and he's incredibly enthusiastic about learning about music, but then he also conveys it in a way that is completely unpretentious and just feels like he really loves making music and working with other people to make music. So it's really inspiring.
Excellent. And what about you, Nick?
The first name that popped into my head, I think just because we've been playing some of his music lately, is Joseph Bellone, who's composer around the time of Mozart, and he was like a classical type composer, and black in France, and world champion fencer, and just by all accounts, a very interesting guy. So I think, he was a military officer, and just like so many random things that you think wouldn't quite align. So I'd love to pick his brain, how he ended up doing all that stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. Got to see like what led to what, and how they interconnect. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for that. So I want to talk a little bit more about you folks, or both of you as an individual. So really, I guess I'll let either of you start with this. How did you start playing your instrument of choice? I mean, was that the one you started with, and what led to that?
Since I'm unmuted, I'll go first. Yeah, I was 5 when I saw Fiddler on the Roof. My parents were big musical fans, and so we watched. I didn't really understand the movie, which is pretty traumatic now as an adult looking back. But as a kid, I was really fascinated by the silhouette of the Fiddler on the Roof and the music, and everybody in my family was really involved with music. My sister was taking piano lessons. My brother was interested in guitar, classical guitar, and my parents are big on singing, and my dad plays harmonica, and so there's kind of like a tradition of music learning. So that's how I started, and haven't really stopped since. Was there another part of that question that I haven't answered yet?
No. So I mean, so you that's when you picked up the violin or the fiddle. At what point did you start playing other instruments?
Oh, that's a good question. When I met Invoke, really. I mean, my dad made me learn to sing. Like I was in choirs by force, and then so that translated nicely to when I needed to start singing with Invoke. And with Invoke, I think we've just taken it to like whenever there's a sound that needs to happen, and we're like, that would sound really good on this thing. If Carl or Nick don't play it, then I'll try my hand at it, maybe some percussion or flute sounds or things like that. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Excellent.
that's about it.
And Nick, when did you start playing your instrument?
I started when I was 5, and I was the second. I'm the middle child, so my
Mm.
older sister already played. She started, well, not violin, but she started on percussion. Actually, she plays percussion and
Mm.
harp. Interesting combo. But we all started, all of us kids, with the DC Youth Orchestra in DC, which is a public school program basically that starts you from nothing. So we were the neighbors of the director, just randomly. And so, he was out walking around with my parents and, asked, "Hey, when are your kids joining the youth orchestra?" And we didn't realize you could start when you were 5, or my parents didn't. Uh,
Yeah.
and, so they thought we were too young, but he said, no, no, bring them over. So my mom asked me if I wanted to play violin or viola, and I didn't know what a viola was. So still don't. And so that was that.
Excellent. And when did you start playing other instruments after that?
Uh, Kind of also with Invoke. I mean, I kind of taught myself a little bit of guitar in high school. Um, and, but, I didn't pick up the banjo till we started this group. A lot of those skills transfer over, though. The left
Mm.
hand skills are very similar between all of the stringed instruments. And then the picking took a little work, and still does. But yeah.
Excellent. And so, at what point did both of you decide, or kind of turn that corner and realize that you wanted to be a performer? That that's the career path you wanted to take.
I was in high school, and I think it's like either a sophomore when I realized that music had been the constant kind of thing in my life, and I didn't really know.
Mm.
It's not that I didn't have other ambitions. I think at one point I wanted to be a chemist, just an amorphous concept of chemist. But then by the high school, I was like, oh, I don't think I have good enough grades right now to like make that a thing. And I hear they don't really care about grades in music school necessarily. So I was like, I just got to get really good at the violin. And so I continued. Yeah, that was about that time. And then, yeah, by the time I was a senior, I was really invested in trying to figure out how to make that work as an artist. Didn't really know how, but I just started off in college. Luckily, I met Invoke, and then everything started kind of like became a little bit clearer about what that path might look like going forward.
Excellent. And what about you, Nick?
It's very similar kind of story. I think, for many of us in the group, it's just it's the one thing that stuck around. So, we all
Mm.
like to experiment, and, kind of like Zach said, with the alternate career path, like trying different things. We all love to try different things, and, have our hands in a bunch of different pots, so to speak.
Mhm.
But, music was the one thing for me. That just was always kind of there. I did sports, and I, was in all the math classes and stuff, and that my interest in that stuff just kind of tapered off, and music was the thing that was still around. So that's how we
Excellent.
ended up
Yeah.
here.
Interesting. So Zach, you specifically mentioned high school. That's kind of the point that you started. Then you mentioned college, and then you met Invoke. Was that in college, or how did you guys meet or form the group, or how did that take off?
Yeah, the I had met Nick when I first came to college. He was in my violin studio. We were studying with the same teacher, David Salmus, at the University of Maryland. And around, I guess I was going to be heading into my senior year. So end of my junior year in college, Carl had just come. He was like a new master's student. Jeff was a freshman, but very much like everyone was like, oh, who's this freshman kid? He's like this virtuoso cello player. he like did a recital in like the first semester or something. Maybe it was the end, and which is very like we're all like, man, overachieving, man. You gotta like wait till like you're a junior, come on. So we all were going to a music festival in Italy, and it was going to be primarily focusing on opera. Like we were going to be the orchestra, but it was there was like a sort of a small chamber component. So I had played with Nick in a group specifically for Black Angels. So that had just happened. Nick had played with Carl, I think, in another group for some various like masters recitals. And we knew that Jeff was coming along. So we're like, oh, that's like 2 violins, viola, cello. Perfect. We'll bring a bunch of like Haydn string quartets, a bunch of Beethovens. And one of our friends who was also going was going to be going as he's a pianist. He was going to basically study with an accompaniment professor, Rita Sloan, amazing pianist. And this guy, Thomas, we were like, oh, we should play like some quintet together. And Carl had found this quintet by Peter Shickley, who, people who don't know who Peter Shickley is, it's PDQ Bach. That's like the composer behind PDQ Bach. So he actually has written a bunch of music outside of his satire, oeuvre, and we played his second piano quintet, which is incredibly unique in a very American sounding, in a very like interesting way. Lots of filling, lots of minimalism, lots of quotes of Brahms, but it's kind of sticky, but not. And we were playing that, and it was just like a lot of fun. And when we got back to the States, we put on a concert of the whole thing, and there was like a reviewer who said that there was like an energy with the group, but I had felt that already in the rehearsals. It was just fun when we were getting together to put this together. It was like, oh, this was really easy to work with everybody in the group. And it seemed like a lot of, I mean, University of Maryland has a huge emphasis on chamber music. So I'd been playing in a lot of different chamber groups for the last couple of years. And it's not easy to get along with 4 different people usually, or more. So it was pretty striking when maybe it was the low pressure of the Italian sun or the wine or something. But we were all, every time we got together to rehearse, it was like really easy. Things just worked out. It felt like a breeze. So wanted to keep that going, and had some ideas for different repertoire that we wanted to try out after working with David Harrington from the Kronos Quartet on Black Angels with Nick. Me and Nick got to work with him. That was really fun. And we knew they were coming back, so we're like, well, let's get a Philip Glass quartet together really quick, and maybe we can get coached again by Kronos Quartet, which never happened, but that was the first kind of like plan. And now it's 8 years later.
So. Wow. So did that first concert sort of lead into, your various repertoire? I mean, because you do have kind of a very diverse offering as far as the sound goes. I mean, did that help shape that in any way, or?
Yeah. So, when we started out, we were basically just a traditional string quartet. But we were still playing, modern American music, Philip Glass and, Jennifer Higdon and stuff like that. So the original repertoire was basically contemporary American composers. And then we realized that we could also be contemporary American composers. So we started writing our own stuff. But, it was always basically in more of a band feel, and still is. We have a lot of classical training, obviously, but many of us have played in different types of bands, different styles, and more kind of traditional band like writing processes. So some of our pieces come in kind of pre-cooked, already composed. But we do improvise a lot and write that way, and so. But it all stems from the same basis in essentially contemporary American classical music. To it's not exactly classical, but that's where it comes from.
Yeah, so that actually brings me to one of my questions that I've been thinking about is, so when we first we at Quad City Arts started looking at this season, and your group came to the top of the list, and so our performing arts director Margot Day said, hey, you should check out this group. They're a string quartet, Invoke, and so I pulled up some things, and I the first song that I had pulled up, the first thing I hear were two things that sort of surprised me when somebody explained it. It was, it's a string quartet, was the banjo, which I thought was a very interesting thing, and then I heard vocals, which isn't something that you typically associate with a traditional string quartet. So I'm curious, how would you both? You've said it a couple of times, string quartet, but how do you describe your band to somebody who has never heard your music before?
With difficulty.
I think we've settled on multi-string ensemble, but yeah, it doesn't cover the vocals. I guess if we considered strings as vocal chords, multi-chordal ensemble, maybe that's the new one. But yeah, that's the difficult thing.
I like that,
because we are straddling the line of, because I think when people think of band, they have a different image, which is pretty well defined. Mm-hmm. And then when you think of a string quartet, you also have a very defined image, and there isn't really anything. Well, there are, I guess, a couple ensembles, but they call like Goat Rodeo Sessions or the Punch Brothers, maybe. But I feel the Punch Brothers are still very much a bluegrass band, I think. I don't know. They also do some very avant-garde classical arrangements and do their own kind of crazy composing too. So yeah, we're somewhere in between there, in between that slider scale.
Well, excellent. Well, I do want to come back to this conversation, but I think before we get too far into this and start talking about your educational resource with Quad City Arts, we should probably give everybody a little clip so they can see a little bit of what we're talking about here. So we've got a clip from, I believe it's one of your Patreon sessions, or a combination of a few.
Yeah, this is actually it was going to be our February stream. We have a monthly stream on Patreon. And then it got pushed back to a couple weeks ago because of Texas's massive snowstorm. So you're going to hear couple clips, an arrangement that Carl did up of Colors by the Black Pumas, which is an amazing band here in Austin, and then a couple other awesome composers that we found for the stream.
All my favorite colors. It's a good day to be, a good day for me, a good day to see my favorite colors.
Man, that fiddle right at the beginning of Shortening Bread just sucks you right in. So,
yeah, it's great.
I'm also really glad that you guys did the song from the Black Pumas. That's a group that I recently was introduced to, and so it's just cool to hear that in a different style there. So
yeah, actually, that's part of our Patreons get to vote every month on like 4 different songs that they want to hear us try to arrange, and so that was the last month's arrangement that was chosen. So it's been a lot of fun interacting with people that way and finding new artists that either they suggest or that we're all listening to right now and figuring out how to make our sound happen with their sound. Yeah.
Is part of that them challenging you, going, can you really do this? Is that, do you find that's a little bit of that?
Yeah, kind of. I think, they tend to vote on just stuff that they think would be cool for us to arrange. But I think we bring that upon ourselves by sometimes suggesting things that that if it happens to win would definitely be a challenge. So yeah, it's a way to challenge ourselves as well as to be challenged by our patrons.
Excellent. So, so you and your group have submitted some educational resources to our visiting artist series, which is obviously gone all digital this year. And then in next week, you are part of our performing arts signature series. So obviously, we just saw a clip. Is there anything that you'd like to share with the teachers? What can the teachers expect from the educational resources that you have put together?
Yeah. So one of the first videos that we shared with the teachers is called The Trace. It's one of our original compositions, and basically we've provided some material to kind of work through what is a string quartet and introduce students to what a normal string quartet might look like, and then see what expectations are already there, and then break that down immediately. Be like, well, how are they different? What other things are they using to become like a different than a string quartet? And then hopefully inspire some people to, maybe they thought they were doing one thing and they wanted to try something else. And maybe they can somehow incorporate whatever else they want to try into what they're already doing in new and fun ways. So there's that. And then we put together a worksheet kind of highlighting an amazing piece by Jesse Montgomery called Strum. And we think it's really important right now for classical groups or groups coming from the classical tradition to highlight young Black composers nowadays. And Strum really fits well with what we're doing. It's very idiomatic for the string instruments, but we wish that we wrote that piece. It's so awesome. And the final resource we put together was kind of an insight into one of our compositional styles, which is group improvisation and creating music through games. We met this awesome composer named Danny Clay. You might have heard of some of his work or worked with him before, but he has these awesome kind of just like little musical games. And when you play them, you realize that you've just composed a song on accident, and you're like, oh, that was way easier than I thought. And it completely disassociates any need for musical training or feeling like you need to know what theory is to put together something that might mean something musically. So I think for that one, we run through, it's called build and trigger. And build is just adding noises on top of each other. And then trigger is just any sound or effect that moves you to the next build. So you have a build, trigger, move on to the next build, trigger, finish it off. And if you assign simple phrases to the builds, you can get really interesting pieces like happy, do a happy build, whatever noises make you feel happy. And then trigger, and then scary, and then trigger, and then happy again. And now you have now you have an ABA, suddenly you're writing a piece. So we did that. Wow. And then we have a little example of like a live build. I think the quote from that one, we improvised on the on a phrase, the monkey stole the moon's bananas. So it's kind of following what that might look like. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that it's very accessible. And for something that even to me seems very inaccessible to try to compose your own music. But be able to break it down like that, that's really cool. And especially really cool for teachers and the students. especially at a time when a lot of it's being done digital. Speaking of digital, obviously by this point we're all getting pretty good at the digital environment. Obviously we're doing this right now. I'm curious. So two questions. First, how quickly did you start making that switch to a digital platform? And then then the second question, and now that things are opening up, are there things that you have learned throughout this past year that you will continue to do into the future?
Yeah, that's we basically started like most musicians, there was a period of 1 or 2 weeks when everything just exploded / imploded, and the entire 18-month calendar was canceled basically. So when we were kind of in touring shape around then. We had just come back from a couple months long tour, so we had all this rep ready, and so we decided just kind of on a whim to produce a streaming concert from my house actually, and this was before we even the first lockdowns and everything. So we played inside, we streamed on Twitch and YouTube and stuff. And it seemed to go pretty well. We had a good time doing it. And then, so we said, let's just keep doing that for the couple months that we'll have to do that as, as we thought at the time. But, it quickly became clear that, we basically shouldn't even be really rehearsing together, or like being in the same room with groups of more than a couple of people. So so we started doing these streams called Invoking Pieces, as we called them, where basically we would do essentially like we're doing right now. We would all call in from our individual places and do solo sets. So we put together an hour or two of music just from 20 minutes from somebody, 20 minutes from somebody else. So we did those actually every week for a couple of months, and that was grueling. So keeping that schedule up was pretty tough, having to learn a new set of original music. But that was like our running with a parachute to doing a once monthly stream with the whole group. So this is I can't remember how many Patreon streams we've done at this point, but maybe 6 months worth or so. So it went from being 1 week all separate to, now we're playing in the backyard and we're, distance with masks on and everything, playing an hour-long set. So that was kind of our trajectory of, how we were going to use the pandemic and kind of tap into our audience digitally. And I forgot the second part of your question.
Well,
second part is, go ahead, Zach.
Well, you said, are we going to keep anything from what we've learned? Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. I think we're going to. We really enjoyed the Patreon streams. It's pushed our, we were talking about being challenged to come up with making these arrangements or writing original music. And so now, we'd been kind of playing the same music for the last, 3 or 4 years and haven't had any time really to develop any new material. And now after 6 months of Patreon, we have easily over like an hour and a half's worth of new music that we feel is ready to be performed and toured, which is really great. And we're like, well, if we keep doing that, this is a great way for us to maintain that kind of creation pace and also interact with our families and friends and the people who we've met along the way. So a great way for people to keep in touch, and they want to see what Invoke's up to this month, they can keep tuning in. So I think we're going to keep doing that as much as possible. We might, I haven't talked to any of the guys yet, but as soon as we open up, maybe we'll try to get more people on the stream, local Austin artists, if they want to come play with us on a stream. That could be fun. We'll see how it evolves, but yeah, it's a really fun way of interacting, and we get a huge kick out of it.
Awesome. That actually makes me very happy. You know, obviously, like we've all had our challenges over the past year, especially in the arts, and especially touring artists like yourself. But it's great to see, you know, things like this come out of it, where you realize that, you know, we can still do some of this, and that we can. We've created something that can outlive this moment in time. So that makes me very, very happy to hear. So speaking of your Patreon streams. When is your next one?
It's on Thursday, March 24th. 5th. March. No, sorry. I should just pull up a calendar. I have too many dates swimming around. It's next Thursday, though.
25th.
So,
yeah, the 25th. I just looked it up.
Yeah, we're featuring, the theme of next Thursday is Cowboys in outer space. We have the chosen cover song is basically the entire soundtrack from Interstellar, which Carl has arranged some choice moments from, because we're not going to play a whole hour and a half's worth of music for everybody. But yeah, and then we're featuring Nick did an arrangement. We played on another stream by another group in Austin that is doing live streaming music concerts, and it was based on video games like a month ago. So Nick did an arrangement of some StarCraft, the video game music, which is pretty epic on string quartet plus banjo and mandolin. So that's why Space Cowboys and things like that.
Very fun. So are you able to access those stream, like the ones that you've done for the past 6 months? Can somebody get on and see those now, or are they only available on that night?
If you get on Patreon, you get access to our streams. I think our lowest subscription level is $5, and you get access to the streams and all the past streams as well. So I think Nick was right. I think we started in August, so that might be 7 streams worth of music.
Yeah, and I would say for $5, that is a steal, and you get to support a great group like you guys. So that's really great. I see Alex just shared the Patreon link in our in the comment section on Facebook there. So any of our people watching right now can check that out. So excellent.
You can binge watch the whole season.
That's right. Just excellent. So I'm curious. This is sort of like has quickly become my favorite section of 7 with Kevin, is our advice section. So, what have you learned going down this path, and what would you like to share with somebody maybe just starting out, or maybe something that you wish you would have known starting out? So I'll let either of you go first. I don't want to put anybody on the spot here. So.
I'll jump in. It's I think we've learned a lot, definitely, with the particular career path that we've taken, and so it's always hard to do that because we don't know what we don't know, obviously, but given where a lot of the music industry as a whole, and specifically classical music, has tended, it seems as if many of the educational institutions haven't quite kept up. And I think we're very lucky that we've had, professors and mentors and universities that have been kind of accepting and allowed us to do our more experimental and fringe things. But I think, many musicians, unfortunately, aren't that lucky and get kind of shoehorned into career paths that perhaps don't really exist in the way that they've traditionally been they traditionally have. So I guess to turn that into advice is it's not in our experience, and in my experience, it's not usually enough to just be able to play really well as a musician. You have to be able to speak well. You have to know how to communicate with people. You have to bring something to the table that's more than just, being able to play. So, I don't think any of us would say that we're the most accomplished, technicians on our instruments necessarily. But we've made a career for ourselves by really committing to doing the things that we love to do and finding ways to communicate that with people. And that's something that we weren't really taught per se. We had to go out and get that and find teachers who were open to that kind of work.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's really, I'm trying to think of if I have better advice. I think for me, it's walking the kind of this knife's edge between what you know and what you don't know. So I think one thing that's helped me, and I think helped Invoke a lot, is we've always set small goals for ourselves. I think the 5-goal thing is really tough. I think people say that you should have 5 and 10-year goals. It's like, what am I doing in 2 months? I don't know. How can you do that? So maybe start there. But I think just starting someplace and committing, like, I think our first goal was, let's get together this Philip Glass string quartet and try to get coached by Kronos. Goal 1. And then that didn't actually ever, we learned the Philip Glass string quartet, but we never got, coached by Kronos. But that led to so many other things along the way. So I think it's picking a goal and committing to what you're doing. But then when you get halfway down the road, if something changes, being flexible enough to recognize it's like, that's not going to work. But I think this other thing will work, and being open to that change as it's happening to you, I think is if you can figure out how to find that out in the moment, that's really useful. I still mess it up all the time, but I'm really glad for those moments when I realize, like, oh, this isn't going to happen, but look what I've found over here. We'll just go over there instead. And maybe that's what I wanted to do anyway. So, hey, perfect.
Excellent. I like that. Nick, Zach, I greatly appreciate you both taking the time to talk with us tonight. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we say goodbye this evening?
Enjoy The Monkey Stole the Moon's Bananas.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
We're excited to, meet everybody in person one day. It'll be a lot of fun.
We too. We are looking forward to bringing you to the Quad Cities and being able to enjoy some of your music in person. So again, thank you both for joining us here this evening. So,
thank you,
Kevin.
Thanks for having
Appreciate
us on.
it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Before we go, you can keep in touch with Nick and Zach and Invoke through all of their social media platforms, invokesound.com, their Facebook, Invoke Sound, their Instagram, their Twitter. They're also on Spotify and SoundCloud. So you can check those all right there. Also, in our comment section, you'll see links for their Patreon as well as their website, so you can keep up on everything that they're doing. You can catch Nick and Zach along with the other 2 members of Invoke on our Performing Arts Signature Series Dinner and a Show next week on March 25th. Your ticket comes with dinner from a local restaurant and a link to the show. There is also a show-only version as well. The next exhibit in our Rock Island Gallery is our annual High School Art Invitational, where students are eligible for scholarships and cash prizes. Keep an eye on our Facebook page and our website, and we will be announcing those winners from that show later in April. We have lots of exciting things happening here. So we have added more artists to our Visiting Artist Series educational resources. And you can find those all on our website at quadcityarts.com. And all those educational resources are free. So if you are a teacher, a parent, or a student, please log on there, check it out. It's easy to sign up, an instant password, and again, free. Our Metro Arts Youth Apprenticeship Program is accepting applications as well. If you know someone between the ages of 15 to 21 who wants to learn poetry, film, mural design, and other programs, have them sign up. Again, quadcityarts.com. Seven with Kevin is moving to a new day. In 2 weeks, we will start having these shows on Wednesdays at 7. So on March 31st, we'll be talking with a few of our Arts Dollars recipients. So that is a lot of information to remember. So don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and visit our website to learn more. Thank you so much for watching. You folks have a nice night.